Hey guys, and welcome to Ep.2 of the Birdhouse, presented by Blubird. We are going to get the room warmed up a little bit here. We'll throw one more track on while we get a couple of our guests up, and then we'll get right into the show. Thank you guys for being early, and if you have a chance, just jump down into that purple pill, toss us a like, a retweet, maybe even a comment, what you're looking forward to in the episode. We love hearing from you. Get that engagement out there and get some more people in here. We'll be with you in a minute. Thanks, guys. Awesome, guys. Well, welcome to week 2, our second episode of the Birdhouse, presented by Blubird. This is a open space where we really just get to hang out, talk about building in blockchain technology, Web3. It's an open discussion. We're lucky enough to have some fantastic guests with us this week. We'll also have our core team members. Corey's back again this week, as well as Ian. I'm Mike Ro, and we're looking to hear from the folks over at Icon. We have one of their heads of product with us. Fez will be joining us. See him up on the stage. Please give him a follow and say hello. And then also we will have Harry Dell with us. We're trying to get him up on stage as well. So, guys, let's just jump right into it. Corey, Ian, how are you guys doing this week?
Doing fantastic, mate. How about yourself?
I've been looking forward to this since last week. I know we had a fun first episode on the holiday weekend here in the United States, and it seems like time's just been flying. But yeah, I can't wait to get back to it and hear more about everything you guys are doing, and then talk to the folks over at Icon.
No, absolutely. It's definitely been one of those weeks. Hopefully you didn't have too much to recover from for the celebrations there, mate.
No, it was pretty low key for us. You know, we have little ones, and so fireworks aren't always the prime measure. We did a little barbecuing and saw some friends on Friday, so it was great, low key, nice. You know, we were back from Disney about 10 days before that, so that was our big trip, and I think we're finally fully recovered. So happy to have a couple extra days off, but the holiday for us was relatively low key.
That's fantastic, mate. Speaking of fireworks, I guess every 4th of July you get those crazy videos that come out of people just doing crazy things and silly things, I might add, with the fireworks and, blowing up things and vehicles and houses and whatnot. So always a bit comical to watch, definitely.
Yeah, that's I guess it's one of those holidays that comes with its own degree of difficulty. So alcohol and fireworks, they don't sound like a recipe for success. But God bless America. Ian, how are you doing? Did you up here with us?
I am doing well. Always glad to be chatting with people smarter than me, and looking forward to this discussion on Web3, DeFi, and all of the exciting things happening in the space. There seems to be lots of news emerging each week, and Blubird is certainly in the middle of it all.
Yeah, it's a great time. It's a great time, and it seems like things are starting to heat up a little bit. Price action aside, but I think the builders in the space. I've been on a couple other spaces the last 48 hours, and it seems like there are products and developments coming out from teams that have been working for a long time and continuing to develop in the space. And to me, that's much more important than, um, you know, the price speculation or the total market cap of an individual token. So, yeah, great, and it's great to be lucky enough to be joined by people like Fez, who is the head of product at Icon Foundation. Um, they have interoperable solutions and for cross chain, and really looking forward to hearing about what they're up to, but also his background. It's extensive. He's been in the space for a long time. So Fez, welcome to the stage. Welcome to the Birdhouse. How are you tonight? Nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be on. Doing well. Yeah, excited to be on here.
Awesome. Well, we can. Why don't we just jump into it a little bit? Do you want to give us a little background on yourself, your journey in Web3? Like I said, this is really just a safe space. We kind of talk about what we did to get here, what our total vision of the space is, and what we hope to achieve, and then also what we're currently working on. And no specific shells, but just kind of the why you're here. So feel free to help us understand who you are and what it is you do.
Cool. Me? Okay. Yeah. So I think my story is like everyone in this space, right? You heard of Bitcoin, you didn't get in at the start. After a little while, bought some alts and random things. Things mooned, felt rich. Didn't realize things don't just only go up. Then the almighty crash, and yeah, as poor as you once started. So once I was a bag holder with all these coins that were worth nothing, I thought, hey, let me just look at what I got into and why was I so excited about this when price isn't involved. And that's when I kind of got the bug and got fascinated that it is actual technology behind, these coins that were just going up. And this is kind of what it enabled. And the DeFi bug really caught me. So that's how I got involved. And I stuck around after the 2016, I think, bull run. So I caught that bull run, failed at it, and then just stuck around and started researching. Part of that, I got into, I loved DeFi, and I thought once I got the hang of it, I thought, hey, I can make content, step-by-step tutorials, because that's what I was struggling to find in the early days, like someone who just took you through step-by-step on how to use protocols without assuming you knew a certain step. So based on that, I actually started a channel, a DeFi YouTube channel, and started showing various protocols and using them and creating tutorials. And that's how I started getting more involved in different communities and landed in Icon. They were launching a bunch of dApps. I started making a lot of content for various applications that were about to launch on the chain. And I created a podcast for that ecosystem, and I got heavily involved there. And off that, I then got involved at Icon itself, because in my old life, I worked in traditional finance in the insurance sector for 20 years and was a project manager in the IT sector for a long time in that organization. So one of the challenges Icon always had was delivering infrastructure in a timely manner. So after getting very involved, I actually, put my hand up and said, "Hey, this is something I can do. I've done in the past. I feel I'm okay at it. I've had a lot of success in the past, so I feel I can get involved and help here." And that's how I landed at Icon and the head of product in terms of the technical side. And I've been for the last 2 years spearheading that at Icon.
Amazing. I love that story too. You hear it so often in this space, and it's not as common in traditional business, but where a community member or somebody passionate comes in and they're learning how to do this stuff for the first time because it's all brand new, and you go out there and you create these tutorials, right? And we were talking last week, kind of at the end, we had some community members come up, and they were talking about the importance of education and wanting to be out there and explain what Web3 was and how it worked, and help onboard the next wave. And there's a senior class here, or even a graduate class, and it sounds like, Fez, you're on the forefront of that, creating YouTube content and podcasts specific, and then doing such a fantastic job that the project took notice and brought you in. And I know so many people that work full-time in Web3, and they have similar stories where they just kept making noise and they were so passionate. And so it's great when we see people break through and take that plunge full-time Web3, but come from backgrounds where they actually understand business process and know how to get things done, especially at a product development level. So thank you for sharing that. And let's we'll talk a little bit more about Icon in a second. But I wanted to give Harry, actually it looks like Harry's trying to get back up on stage. So let me see if he's here, and if not, then maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what Icon is. But Harry, welcome to the Birdhouse. Or are you live with us? You in a spot where you can speak and kind of introduce yourself for a second? Tell us your story and how you got to Web3.
Yes, I can. Thank you. I was having some technical glitches. It all just went silent. I thought it was broken, but it was just me.
Spaces has been very difficult the last couple of weeks, so we'll bear with you. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Look, I'm a little bit different to a lot of the speakers here in that I'm very non-technical in terms of DeFi and developing software and products themselves. So I'm a lawyer primarily. I do a lot of international tax work, a lot of international structure planning. I do a lot of work with Blubird and others, and I've been in the space for 6-7 years now, where I started actually in government looking at tax issues with Bitcoin and Ether in 2017. And since then, I've just kept an interest. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I really just jumped all the way in. That was about the time when you could start to make a living as a lawyer in just crypto. And I do a lot of crypto these days, and not just in Australia where I'm based, but all over the world. I also I launched a product with I had a technical co-founder. I was the ideas man, and other things, which successfully we merged into Blubird in December last year. So I've known Corey for a very long time, and it was a good time for us to join forces. That's been really, really exciting. Look, I guess I have more of a philosophical view on DeFi and how it makes a lot more sense. I work with wealthy companies and people and doing all sorts of things, and you can see market monopolies even as they're being formed. But DeFi has just got that philosophical difference in that I can jump in and be a market maker if I want. I can jump in and do all sorts of things and innovate very cheaply compared to TradFi, and make really cool, interesting products that generate value. So a lot of finance is really just moving funds around, but there's a lot of value that is not captured well in TradFi, and efficiencies and access are the two main things that I love to see. And every protocol that does that, I've seen do pretty well. That's probably enough about me, though. No one likes the lawyer talking too much.
No, we love to hear it, and I think that's really fascinating that you've come into the space to try to find those efficiencies and create that access, as you mentioned, but do it with such a base of knowledge that allows you to push limits, but also not break rules or become more efficient of the existing rules. So I could probably listen to you talk about that all day. And, I
To be
think
fair,
there's a lot of strategies there. So
to be fair, Harrison,
never be shy on
you're-
this stage.
Harrison, you're probably the most interesting lawyer that I've come across in the Web3 space, to be honest. So don't don't sell yourself short, on what you have to say, because you're very plain about what you speak about, and it's always a pleasure.
Oh well, that's very kind, Corey. I know you've met a lot of lawyers too, so that means a lot. Actually, there's one thing I forgot to mention. If I might have a moment, not to shill, but to share. I see a lot of problems. I have a very high view on seeing a lot of different problems, which means I get to see a lot of problems to solve, and I get to pick the most interesting and biggest impact. And it was quite funny, Corey, that we sort of ended up solving a similar problem, and then we got to merge. But the new problem that I'm seeing a lot is actually on and off ramps, especially in Australia, but also just globally, is really trying to ease that on and off ramp process, make it cheaper. You see 5-10% fees and spreads going on. So that's the problem I'm solving at the moment. Separate to my law firm. Clearly, I'm not busy enough. Now I'll pass it back.
No, thank you. And please feel free. This is an open conversation. We can kind of do an interview style and just getting to know Harrison, you and Fez as our guest this week. Certainly want to hear from you. But anyone on the panel, please come off mute. Don't feel like you have to put your hand up. This is just meant to be a discussion, and we're just hanging out, kind of sharing the vibes, what brought us to Web3, and then talking about what we like to build. So Fez, fire away.
Oh, I have just, I actually agree. Harry, I didn't want you to stop talking. And even just the last bit that you said, I have questions and I could talk about Icon and we'll get to that. But this is a bugbear at the moment, the on-ramps, off-ramps, especially that third parties offer. It's something we're currently investigating for one of our protocols. But in general, I thought just zoning in on the Australian market in the last 3 weeks, it's getting harder and harder, even just through traditional on-ramps through exchanges, for us to move money from our bank accounts into these exchanges. The banks are just freezing it midway. They authorize the transfer and they just don't let us do it. It's becoming a real problem here. Is this something you're seeing a lot of, or there's a lot of scrutiny around it? Is there any progress being made? Well, yeah, I have questions around that. I'd like to get some insights.
Well, there's the big problem is banks freezing payments. I've personally been debanked 6 times now, not for doing anything that was illegal or untoward or not permitted, simply doing, for example, peer-to-peer transactions, because peer-to-peer is still the best way to get funds into and out of an exchange without your bank knowing what you're doing. And it shouldn't be that important that's the privacy shouldn't be that important, but essentially banks are retaliating and shutting people down and closing exchanges. And we saw what happened to Binance Australia about 2 years ago. That's still sending, ripples out through the industry. Well, look, the product that I'm building, and it's very early, it'll be about probably 8 to 10 weeks before, I'll be able to unveil it, is supposed to fix a lot of those problems. Because you've got some providers out there where you can on-ramp, and exchanges integrate with things like MoonPay and Bankster and things like that, but the spreads are just enormous. It's just not good enough, and the banks are onto it. So it needs a different infrastructure to actually give people the freedom to use their own money, which is also part of what DeFi is about. Is you can participate in all the protocols that the big boys are using. If you're big, bad, and scary enough, if you've got $200 million and you're working with Macquarie Bank, they're going to let you transfer as much as you want to an exchange. But if you're a regular Joe Blow and you've got 100K in your superannuation account, you want to put into a pretty trusted exchange, like Independent Reserve in Australia, very old exchange, it'll get blocked and potentially you'll get debanked. And even if you don't get debanked at the time, you might get debanked 2 years from now, because risk attitudes change. It's a bit of a disaster. So I'm trying to fix that, and not just Australia, on more of a global scale as well. Integrate with MasterCard, Visa, direct local bank transfers, so they're pretty speedy, and make it so people have just freedom with their money. I still don't understand why it's such a big problem. Like, it shouldn't be. it shouldn't be a problem that I have to solve, which is sort of the saddest thing about it. And I know it's good validation to know it's not just me seeing things in my little bubble. It's a wider problem. But do you see it sort of across the world as well, as bad as Australia? I know the US is a bit funny, but what about Southeast Asia, which is very crypto heavy? Are there those same banking problems, those on-ramp problems that we see here? I'm asking to the room, I guess.
Well, I don't know about answering that. I'll leave that to some of the others. But when they answer that, I have a follow-up based on what you just said. So, but I do think it does play into the answer a little bit. So, historically, if you look at financial companies, they have most of the time wanted to retain control, protect their turf, minimize risk. And in a lot of ways, blockchain, crypto, DeFi, that has kind of forced them to change the game. So they've played defense by trying to close things out. But even this week, I know Corey shared something about Goldman Sachs aiming to create 3 tokenized funds. So, I think we used to, even up till a few months ago, talk about Web2 and the transition to Web3. But now I think we're seeing a lot more integration of DeFi into traditional finance, because I think they're starting to realize if we don't evolve, we're going to naturally lose business. So I'm just curious, and this is for everyone here, do you think that trend is going to take a lot longer? Or do you think that some of these ripples that we're seeing pop up now are going to, really ramp up quickly?
That's a good question. My personal thoughts are that with the larger institutions, at least some of them have been working behind the scenes on this sort of thing for quite some time now, and they're only just now starting to unveil, their grand plans. Other times, though, because I've been having quite a few phone calls with those sorts of areas as of late, and sometimes they're just making it up as they go as well. And so I'm kind of seeing two sides of that, and it's very interesting, to see the quality of where some of this stuff is at. And honestly, it's a little bit embarrassing to see some of these larger institutions and what they're looking at and think is good versus what actually should be thought of as good. So that's that's my thoughts on that, at least. I don't know if that quite answered your question there, but it's definitely something that I am noticing as I'm entering into these conversations.
Definitely answered it for me. I'll let everyone else share their 2 cents, because I'm sure you all have thoughts about the evolution of what's happening. Because let's be honest, as this happens more in finance, it's going to impact all other facets of business and life as well. This is just the starting point.
I might jump in here. Like the banks are saying, oh no, it's not an attack on crypto. It's all AML, anti-money laundering problems, and like that is true to an extent. But those tools like Chainalysis have existed for 7 or 8 years now, and have grown massively and are pretty sophisticated. The AML risk can be dealt with, and all that's left is protecting their own turf. That's what it's got to be. Australian banks don't want us to do it because they say you can, have your payments go through in 24 hours, but like we can just do it instantly in crypto. An integration into Ripple Ledger or any sorts of other protocol, it doesn't really matter which, could make it actually work a whole lot faster. And it just can't be anything else apart from protecting the existing status quo, which is fun to be part of dismantling.
I love that. I think there's a rebel in all of us that are here this early for the space, right? You did mention, you're talking about the banks and them kind of wanting to keep the status quo, but then you talked about working with credit card companies like Visa and MasterCard, and you see, updates that Stripe is trying to integrate crypto payments. Are the credit card companies and the processors, are they more apt, or are they just trying to pull power away from the banks? Or do you have, just an observation I made, but something that maybe you have insight on, or at least a opinion?
I think the card issuers, MasterCard and Visa, are a bit more open to it because they just want transaction volume. That's all they want. They don't care what bank it comes from. They don't care where you're spending it in the world. And if they can find efficiencies to put more payments through faster and cheaper, then they're going to go for that every time. Like Visa's been talking about crypto for 3 or 4 years now. We've only seen the banks really start getting on board in the last 12 months with businesses. Standard Chartered, launched Certia Custody and got some big investment, and that's going to be a big part of that Web 2.5 change. But Visa and MasterCard, I think Visa bought a CryptoPunk. Like, that's pretty degen for a company like Visa. And sure, they bought at the top of the market, someone's exit liquidity, which is great. But they just want efficiency. The banks want to keep the funds in their platforms because then they can offer their TradFi products. But Visa and MasterCard just couldn't care less, and they're going to move faster. You can get Visa and MasterCard cards issued. There's businesses like Stables, like Immersive, like a few others. Like, you can just integrate that into a project and you can start issuing cards backed by crypto. It's actually not that hard to do anymore. The hard bit is accepting it, because there's still banks involved and they're the ones that get skittish. So I think Visa and MasterCard are a bit of a Trojan horse, actually. And I think they're going to help a lot in pushing it forward. And I think they've already helped a lot so far. So we need to love our friends at Visa and MasterCard, because they actually have this, sort of Damocles over the banks. If the banks are going to get upset about crypto, but Visa and MasterCard accept it anyway, the banks are going to lose business. The funds aren't going to go through the banks. They're going to go through other payment rails. So it's a good way to put a bit of fire under banks generally. And I think it's already happening. But, bank change just, takes about 2 to 3 years to really happen. So ask me again in 2026, 2027. And I think we'll make good progress by then.
All right.
So I think one other thing with that I completely agree is, if you look at the early days of crypto, what everyone said is, great, it's a storage of value, but what else does it do? So I think when you do things like integration with credit card companies, you move it from storage of value to utility, something that could be actionable. And that has ripples that touch many as well. And that's probably going to be a catalyst for banks too.
So just to jump in here for a minute, I have a little different take on the banks and on the credit card companies. And I can say that because I've worked for many. I've worked for Morgan Stanley in their fixed income division, moving millions and billions worth of dollars. I worked for Wells Fargo in their retail side. I worked in their investment side. I've worked for one of the largest payment backbones that exists. It's the backbone rail for PayPal, for Amazon, for UPS, that kind of stuff. The problem with it is they do move slowly. The rails are archaic. They're using this standard payment rails from the 50s that still exist. And when it comes down to it, they're all going to spin the story of how they support the mediums, because they do want to have that revenue capture. But the flip side is they don't have the infrastructure or the ability to move quickly in order to do that. Great case in point, when I left Wells Fargo in 2017 to get into this space, I left to start a digital wallet. I have an affidavit sitting in a lawyer's office somewhere, because even then it was on their radar, but I can assure you that they've done nothing since, right? So the other thing is you take JP for a minute. You've got somebody like Demon, right? Who's denouncing crypto, blah blah blah. We all know exactly who he is. I know for a fact that they've been building trading floors and a rail system in there for the last 5 years. I've got people in there that I know. Like that's the world that I came from. And so while they are, saying that they're going to be in the space, they're all treading very, very, very carefully and very much move at a dinosaur's pace. And so I'd probably say that 3 years looks probably more like something like 5 or 6 if they continue to run at the pace that they're running at. So I think not to get long-winded about it, but I think there's some movement within those organizations. But I think that as long as the powers that be and the way they do want to control the financial system, you're going to run into that, on top of the fact that it is still highly human capital, right? So fixed income, for example, that was managed by a spreadsheet that was probably about 20 feet by 30 feet if you were to lay it out on a wall. And that's how they managed, the human capital managed those transactions on and off their Bloomberg terminals. That has not changed, and so until they actually change some of their own processes at a Web2 structure level, they're gonna have a problem going into the Web3 structure level because they don't have the infrastructure in place to do that. But anyway, that's my diatribe about that. They are moving, but my take's a little bit that they're probably even a little bit farther behind than people think.
I can also share some personal experience here. So we have a product, shameless shill here, Hana, which is a multi-chain self-custody wallet. And at the moment, we're a couple months away from launching a debit card feature. So in the wallet itself, you can issue your debit card. It gets added to Google Pay, and you can then transfer whatever asset you hold in the wallet onto the debit card and go spend till you feel content. And what has been interesting about this experience is we are working with providers who are completely compliant, especially in Australia at the moment. There are several providers that are completely compliant and you can partner with, where they take care of all the legal aspect to make sure they're completely abiding by all the laws, et cetera, et cetera. And you can integrate in their product and just move with it. So that itself has been a pleasant experience. Yes, there's ongoing work, but it hasn't been as difficult to build that functionality into the wallet and provide this service. So we're looking to take that product to market in 2 months' time. But it seems like my observation's always been, I agree with what Harry said, the Visa seems to be more receptive, and they are creating ways and trying to work with various providers, etc., to enable this kind of functionality. And the second part is I've found off-ramping to be personally a lot easier to do when it comes to getting your money out from crypto in any way. Like exchanges don't block that, banks don't block that. Hey, you got an extra 10K, woohoo! But when it comes to then going the other way, that's where it seems to be where all the excessive charging comes in if you use your on-ramps service providers, or in Australia for in particular, if you try to use the banks to go to exchanges, they just block it. So that's been my take. So I do agree. These seem to be more happy with the space or trying to get on board.
It does. Interesting. So given that Icon is essentially an interoperability layer, right? One of the big challenges that I've seen, and I think everyone here has seen, is regulation. That touches what can and can't be done. It touches security and privacy. I mean, we're now looking at things like zero knowledge proofs and all that kind of stuff. Do you see interoperability as something that's going to help ease how regulations are done and make it a little more beneficial for those involved?
No, I think I don't know. I don't really have an answer to that. Just thinking about it, I don't think so. I think interoperability itself is constantly proving to be a challenge between different tech stacks. Yes, layer 2s, for example, are getting more streamlined in how they connect and talk to each other. We see more and more services coming up around that. But if you start looking at connections between all the various different layer ones, and I'm talking EVM, Move, IBC, etc. They all have various interoperability solutions that they're pioneering or trying to adopt each other's solutions, which then starts to get a bit more technical. But yeah, I don't really have an answer in terms of making it more compliant. I think if there's a universal standard that gets adopted, yes, but as long as there's a lot of different solutions out there, it becomes harder and harder to be compliant. And I think that in general is one of the challenges, right? Like you mentioned these apps that exist that can track and collate all this data. That is true, but they are true for the bigger chains, right? Once you start getting to the niche chains out there, or the various layer ones, smaller layer ones, there's actually no tracking mechanisms around that. And I'm fairly certain, governments, ATOs, stuff like that, they don't have the time nor money to kind of put together what they need to track that information. It's just not worth it. So yeah, I do think it'll be an ongoing challenge.
Hey Fez, I'm curious. When you said your work, and maybe this is because it was Australian based. You're talking about providers. Like, one of the things that we ran that I've been part of a couple of projects that have run into from that was the providers actually being shut down here in the U.S. So, for example, there was a project called Unbanked. They originally a coin called Turnio. Large adoption, like lots of use. But what they ran into after almost 5 years of being in business and being compliant to a T is that here in the US, those providers decided that they were going to start pulling the plug on some of these entities. And so, at least in the US, it's been somewhat of a hurdle or a challenge for those types of businesses, for any of these types of businesses, even if they follow the compliance, to actually have the providers step up to the plate and do that, which I think is interesting based off of what you said about having providers down there, because what we've kind of seen up here is a little bit of a different take with some of the providers, that big name providers, Prime, for example, all of a sudden deciding to pull the plug on a lot of these crypto based card issuers.
No, look, we had something similar at the same time. While all that happened there, something similar happened here. And I don't know exactly. I think through the fire, then came a new spawn of legislation and stuff to try and support a little bit of the industry in Australia. Like, don't get me wrong, they support it, and on the other side, tax it so heavily that it's not worth it. But in terms of support, they have in Australia, there's this thing. They have a blockchain association Australia now. It's meant to be a separate entity, but it's super close with the government, so it's kind of contradictive in my eyes. But they have been working to enable some of this and clear up some of these pain points that our companies have. And well, how do we be compliant? What do we need to ensure to be compliant? And it has enabled a few companies to build products on that. Hence, even with this debit card, for example, it is actually only going to be available in Australia. Like, yes, once you have the debit card, you can go around the world and spend the money, but it can only be issued currently in Australia because the provider is compliant by law in everything to do in Australia. So, yeah, it is an interesting one in Australia. And that way, we've been a little bit fortunate. So, yeah, and this is not the only firm. Like I said, there's a few other parties that exist in Australia. I know Stably, for example, Harry, you mentioned them. They also have a product. There's a little bit different, but they have a debit card product, right? You have an app, you can set it up, you can go spend your crypto, and it is completely compliant by Australian law and regulation. So, yeah, now the other point to what you've said, yes, it's all going swimmingly well, but who knows? At some point, it could all turn again if the banks flex their power. I don't know, but at this point, yeah, it's going our way.
Right. And so with the debit cards, are those cards that you guys are working with, are they the onboarding the crypto and it's just being converted to standard currency, as opposed to being converted on the spend. I know that's been a hurdle for it was a hurdle for this one project in particular, and that may have been what kind of helped nail that shut, is that they weren't onboarding crypto into fiat. They were controlling the crypto on the execution of the spend, and that may have created some headache for them. So I was just curious, if there was, if that was kind of how you guys are handling it or not.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, because I know like another custodial product that I used to use, WireX. It's all around the world. You can kind of nominate whatever asset you want, and then on the fly it would swap it as you go to spend your money. In this instance, though, what would happen is you would swap whatever asset you want to spend into USDC, and then just basically use the USDC as if it's on your card. And it's currently the provider that has set up this service is on Polygon. So everything kind of their main contracts, and they're going to expand on other chains, but currently that's how it would work. So basically the assets would get swapped into USDC. In the wallet, it just sits in USDC on Polygon, and the debit card will then pull from it as you spend and convert it automatically to Australian dollars, etc.
Cool, thanks.
Fez, that's an interesting point you bring up. That as you guys at Icon are working on cross-chain solutions, and you mentioned Polygon, do you see that there is one chain that most of the DeFi is going to, or is it spread out? Is there a preference based on project? Anything that you guys see from your vantage point that kind of points to chain superiority on any of this?
It's a good question. So for us, right, we're an old layer one, right? We've been around for a while. We've had a heyday, and now one thing as with many big layer ones at the moment, you're seeing the older ones, like as incentives are starting, there's no incentives to give out for their protocols. User bases are starting to transition to different chains. And a great example is like Sui, for example, right? Sui's been, this cycle has acquired a large user share. That is a different layer one. But in my eyes, predominantly that's come from ridiculous incentives using their protocols. So at Icon, yes, this is a challenge. One of the things we're doing at Icon, originally we started trying to build our own interoperable solution. While we got that out, we later, at the start of last year, we pivoted. We said, okay, well, we'll adopt a few different interoperable solutions and implement a messaging protocol where you can pass messages, but we'll make it compliant with various interoperable solutions like IBC, Layer 0, all the other ones. That way, protocols wanting to use our tech stack could use whatever interoperable solution they choose, but use that general message passing, the messages can pass through our standard. Anyway, long story short, once we built this, we kind of thought, okay, we need a flagship product. We can't get people to come over to Icon because, people are always chasing liquidity. Layer 2s, as Arbitrum as they launch, all these ridiculous incentives, it's just hard to compete with. So part of our flagship product is Balance, again, shameless shill. Balance is a cross between MakerDAO and Uniswap. It has kind of both these components in it. It's a CDP, which is something to this day, like one of the DeFi fundamentals, I just love. Like, I know there's so much new stuff coming in DeFi, but I always come back to, I love the idea of taking my asset and unlocking its potential. Like, I can hold and unlock its value and take that money and go do things with it while I still hold my asset, right? So the flagship product is this, and what we're doing is we're deploying it on various chains. So we're on various layer 2s in the IBC ecosystem. Soon we'll be on Sui and various other ecosystems. But the way it works is it's the same interface on all these chains. We use cross-chain messaging as we go on new chains. For the user, they're using the app natively. They sign in with their wallet. They go mint the stablecoin or swap into any asset they choose natively, cross-chain swaps. But in the background, where actually all the core logic and contracts sit on Icon. So messages get sent to Icon, it gets executed, messages get sent back to the destination chain. And to the user, this is completely unknown. It's completely abstracted away from the experience, even to the point of you sign the one transaction. You don't need to sign the other chain's transaction or any of that. It's one transaction, wait 30 seconds, boom, you've taken out your loan, you've done your swap. And that's kind of been our plan of attack to go, hey, let's not try and pull the users to our chain. Let's just go where the users are. Let's give them, and if they migrate, great, we'll be on that chain where they migrate to the next big heyday thing. But they're using the same interface. They're used to the protocol. They completely understand it. They're getting all the same incentives on their new chain in a interface and thing they understand. And to me, like, it resonates well with me because I am a bit of a degen. I love going and just chasing yield on different things. I've obviously gotten ruined many a time from it. But what I do find challenging when I do all of that is it's such a learning curve in this space because the protocols are all so raw or so different, and they're implementing new things, and you got to spend so much time just understanding, okay, what is different here, and after a while, I've lost that drive to keep understanding things and understanding new UIs and what they're trying to do here. So for me, like, I always come back to, it would be great to have a consistent experience on these different chains that I can relate to kick off my journey. So that's why I feel I really love what I'm doing. And I feel so passionately about what we're building because at its core, to this day, while all these new experiences in DeFi exist, I've always loved the Uniswap and MakerDAO's DAI, two core pillars of DeFi I still love to this day. I hope I answered the question. I felt like I did and then went on my own rant.
It was perfect. I was struggling just to get back to the mute button. But no, I think it's really interesting. And as you say, like, you're so deep into this, you're designing the products, but you're also looking at it from a user standpoint. And many of the things, I'm not a DeFi expert, and I don't even attempt to dabble. And I know that many of the people that would say that they're Web3 native probably don't even fully comprehend all of the opportunities that are out there. And then you talk about these degen opportunities and yield and taking advantage of that arbitrage. And how do you even begin to do that? And so much of our current life online has become automated, and yet we don't think about the underlying URLs and the internet protocols and things that have been built over the last 20, 30 years to make that such a seamless situation. And so I guess as we've been discussing DeFi, but just to bring it back to all of the founders and builders that we have here, what does success in Web3 look like? Harry kind of mentioned, he had a thought on where the banking industry was going, and set it around for 2 or 3 years to check back in with him. But what do we do in the next 12 months? What do projects like Blubird or Icon do to show success? Is it iterative? Is it a quick strike, and then there's a simpler solution out there and everybody comes to use it because that's the case? So from your experience, and this is open to anyone, what does success look like for you, and where do we go in the next 12 months?
Oh dear, looks like no one's jumping in, so I might just pop in here for a second.
Let's do it, Corey.
So, so I don't know if I can answer that specifically, but I guess, what's been successful, at least in my eyes, for me personally, and it's the same old, saying of taking back control of your own finances, right? So you see a lot of banks doing what they will with your funds. You technically, once you deposit your funds in a bank, at least here in Australia, they're not your funds anymore. The bank actually owns those funds. You're now a debtor, you're not a creditor. So that, when I found that out, that was pretty scary. So I was like, wow, that's not good. Especially when you see, at least back then, there was a lot of issues in Greece where banks were just not letting people access their funds. And they had a bank run basically. And that was terrifying for those people because they had no way to access money just for the most basic of things to survive. So, for me, success is being able to decouple when I choose from the traditional banking space. So, do I use banks for everyday things? Absolutely. There's no escaping that. But I also have the freedom to do business globally without, having to worry about transactions getting pushed back or waiting a good amount of time for it to be actually going through. And then there's the currency transfer or exchange rate spread that they have, which is, I usually lose a couple $100 each transfer. So that's a pain in the butt as well. And just to kind of go on about banks one more time, is that one of our companies is registered overseas, and we went to pay. This is for my venture capital that I run. We went to pay a corporate renewal that we have to do every year, as every company does, and we got given 4 options for paying via a bank transfer. And not one of those options was recognized by CBA for an international bank transfer. So I don't know what's going on there, but the transfer got rejected. And now I have to, waste a bunch of my time to figure out why their archaic system failed. So again, just kind of to go back to what your question/statement was, that's having the ability to not have to worry about that sort of thing and just transfer funds to who I want when I want. That in itself is a lot of freedom and success, I think. On top of that, with what we're doing at Blubird, is building a bunch of tools to make the already complex nature of how people interact with projects and how projects interact with their supporters a heck of a lot easier and, a lot more streamlined. So, for our business venture, making people's lives easier, that's what success means to us over there. Hopefully, hopefully I covered that. I don't know.
No, that was great, and yeah, that was exactly what I was looking for. Just kind of what it would be to you as the user, but also, I guess, for anyone else, or back to you, Corey, as a founder, it's hard to, especially when you're going up against such legacy technologies and people that don't want to give up their position. It's hard to say that, okay, we're succeeding in our quest, right? Because it's a bunch of little breadcrumbs along the way. And it's not like one moment where you're fully vetted and, you have 100,000 daily active users or 1 million daily active users, something like that. So how do you keep the team in line and knowing that you're on the right path when you can't necessarily have a widget moment where, sales go berserk and everybody comes flocking to buy your thing for Christmas?
Good question. So I don't know. I think everyone just sees the common goal of where we're heading, and there's such a demand for what it is that we're particularly building. It stems from, for those listening who might not know, my introduction to Web3 was 2017. Since then, I've personally helped launch well over 100 projects. I have sat on 40 advisory boards, and I've ran a VC for the last 4.5 years. So I've seen it from both sides of the market, I suppose, of what founders need and what investors need, or what contributors need. And oftentimes, these issues should have been solved a long time ago, but they haven't. So, when I'm speaking to other project founders about what it is that we're aiming to solve, they get very excited to the point where sometimes they try and, ask for it to be ready yesterday, sort of thing. So, there's definitely that product market fit that I haven't seen in a very long time, with the way people are kind of reacting to it, especially on the founder side. With the investor side, that will come with time. We're creatures of habit, so we don't always like to do something new. But when we do finally take that step and that leap to do it, and find out it's actually a lot easier than the previous flows, it's just going to be a natural course of adoption from that perspective. But no, the motivation comes from hearing the enthusiasm from a lot of the founders that we speak to, and the feedback that we've been given by founders who have early tested our software, and given that feedback, and they're really, really excited about this, which makes us really excited too.
I love to hear that, especially in a space like this, where so much of what is deemed successful is based on attention. And on a daily basis, while many founders do make themselves accessible, the work that they're doing or the projects that they're on, tons of decisions go in between every phase of what's launched or what's announced. And so to know that the people who have been building, that have been creating, that are searching for these solutions are coming to you and are giving you that positive feedback is, that's amazing from the beta testing. And I think that, I'd kind of like to hear also from Fez, doing things with Icon, and that, you guys obviously get to work with a lot of different projects and chains too. What is it that, what are indicators of success for you guys too? And what are some of the goals that you guys have coming up here in the next 12 months?
Yeah, okay. So I do actually, what Corey said really resonated with me, because I think that we've got like various challenges, right? So you got building a product. That's one challenge. You got the tools you need to build that product. Are they there, or do you have to create them? And a great, like I noticed with Birdhouse, there was, a complete suite of tokenomics. So it helps a project build the entire tokenomics distribution, et cetera, which is 2-3 years ago. Like if you wanted to do stuff like that, people were just pulling it out of thin air and creating what they thought was right. Like there was no process, there was nowhere you could go to. So it's great to see that for the builders, tools like these are coming online that are enabling and helping make that process far simpler. So you can focus on building the product, and you've got subject matter experts coming in to help you facilitate, if you're going to do a token launch, et cetera. So I think that's one component, and it's great to see that sort of stuff coming along. I do think the eternal challenge at the moment is the end user. It is, as you said, very what attention heavy. Like this is the narrative at the moment, and the meme mania is a great example. And I'll get crucified for this, but I actually don't like meme coins, and me don't resonate well. But this cycle definitely, apart from the ETFs, we saw all this meme attention, and a question, was it retail users? But that's what the name of the game was. In fact, as I've been going to a few conferences, I was at Vietnam and going to all the various workshops that different projects had. Everyone I spoke to, all they seemed to care about was memes, or building some kind of like pump fund tool that enabled tokens to get distributed. And when I started talking about CDPs and stuff like that, they all thought, no, that's too complicated. Why would we want that? Which I felt was like we're going backwards. But what we're seeing even right now is like, okay, meme mania has ended. People have just gotten burnt by it, and we're back to same one. It's like phase one. It's not acquired and kept users. And I feel like, okay, how do we keep those users? How do we get the next wave of users? We're hearing all gaming, all kinds of things, but I personally don't feel anyone's cracked that yet. Like, right? We have too many blockers that still exist in terms of on-ramp, off-ramps. That alone becomes the biggest barrier that new users go, nah, screw it, it's not worth my time. So I think that's a challenge that we need to fix. In terms of what we're doing at Icon, and we've had similar, so with balance, as I explained, one of the things that we're definitely seeing in conversations due to the way we've set it up, and something it's been a bugbear of mine, is I love using different chains, but what I hate is the fragmented liquidity around it. right? Like even Uniswap, great example. At least I know with the various layer 2s, etc., I can go to one default site. I know what it's like. I know there'll be liquidity there, but it's fragmented liquidity. Every layer has its own liquidity of those same assets in the pool, and you may get a new layer 2 that just doesn't have enough liquidity. And one of the things with Balance, as we're growing its feature set, it's still early days, but we can offer projects building on various chains what I call unified liquidity, right? So as long as they have a liquidity pool on Balance, whatever chain Balanced is on, they can have that liquidity accessible, the same pool to that chain. So suddenly you've got, instead of having liquidity on 6 different AMMs on various blockchains, you can have it on the one app that is available on 6 blockchains to 6 different user groups who are on those chains for whatever reason they need to be. But when they're going to trade your asset, your token, you have got now 6 blockchains users worth of liquidity if you put incentives on that, etc., etc. So for me, this particular conversation, as I'm approaching and talking to founders, it's very much resonating with, where they go, okay, next steps, how do we get involved in this? Now, there's a couple more components we need to build out to enable that, because it's early days as we've been launching, but that's kind of where I'm seeing a bit of success for us when we're trying to acquire, work with other teams on different chains.
Makes sense. Well, I appreciate you breaking that down for us a little bit more and explaining, how the interoperability works. I just want to pay attention to time here. We're about an hour in. We usually go an hour, maybe 90 minutes. So just want to make sure nobody has any hard stops, or be cognizant of everyone's time as we move on. If everyone's open for it, we can chat a few more minutes and then wrap up. But also wanted
I'll have to jump, but yeah, just keep going without me. That's okay.
All right, Harry, thanks for jumping in. Really appreciate your perspective. Look forward to talking to you in the future.
Yeah, look forward to it. Thanks again, guys. See ya.
Awesome. Also just want to throw it back out there to the room. This is an open space. There's a lot of legends on the stage, a lot of builders doing great things, but we're also community driven. So anybody who wants to come up, ask a question, interact, one of the beautiful things about X and Twitter Spaces is that we have this opportunity for social audio and interacting with people that we may not have access to. So that invitation's always open. Just throw a request, put your hand up if we bring you up, and you can ask a question or add to the conversation as we get closer to the end here. But we've heard a lot of really interesting discussion on the DeFi side. That's not necessarily my area of expertise, but I really enjoyed learning. And so Fez, thank you for sharing, and to GP and Harry for coming in and adding their perspectives. Definitely have a better foundation than I did an hour ago, and I hope our audience does too. From here, where do we want to go? Ian, haven't heard too much from you. What's on your mind tonight? Anything from this conversation that's percolating for you, or you want to double back in while we still got Fez?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the kind of foundational takeaways from the discussion is, there are tons of complications that we see, Web2, Web3, and beyond. And a lot of us are really working to simplify, improve, and solve those things. And, let's be honest, one of the things that I'm sure everybody here on stage and in the audience and beyond hears every single day, multiple times a day, is those 2 magic letters, AI. What we're hearing often is, the mainstream thing that's come about, Gen AI. That's kind of what got everyone really interested in testing things, creating different tools, little fluff, a little substance. But to me, there's a lot of potential benefit with the integration of AI into blockchain and Web3, pattern recognition, fraud detection, risk mitigation, all that kind of stuff. But given the amazing group we have here, I'm curious what you all think the near-term and long-term benefits of AI and blockchain integration.
AI and the audio was a bit crackly. I missed the end. What was?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just the integration of AI into blockchain. Using AI in all the different things we're trying to create. Curious what you see as the biggest benefits.
Look, when it comes to AI, and I use it in terms of blockchains. I haven't seen. It's not a subject I have explored too much. I know we've had the wave of AI projects boom, but again, that's just peak crypto where that's the narrative. I haven't really seen anything come from it at this point, and I'm completely wrong on this. This is just off the top of my head. I have yet to see a use case of AI being implemented in blockchain that makes things better. So yeah, I am not well versed in the matter to comment in terms of AI. Yes, I'll just stop there.
Corey or GP, any thoughts?
I think we may have lost GP. I think he had a hard stop. Ian, there is something going on with your mic. I don't know if you got AirPods in or clicking against your shirt, but it's just a little crackly when you go to talk. So, Corey, AI integration, benefits, detractors. You want to jump on that one?
Yeah, I can have a bit of a 2 cents worth, I suppose. So I guess from a VC side, I see a lot of AI projects. A lot of pitch decks come across our desk, and I'll be honest, not a lot of them have merit, to be honest. Most of them, they are just trying to create a token that rewards people for their data, for training data, or for access into said data sets and things like that, which, let's be honest, that's not actually a real utility or a use case for it. So honestly, I feel like it's just a buzzword that people are throwing out there to raise capital to build out their AI models, and that they have not a lot of real substance in the Web3 sector itself. Can an AI model be decentralized, with the use of access tokens via Web3? Yeah, absolutely. But is that a good enough reason to base that around your entire fundraise? No, definitely not. These sorts of projects should implement a token after the fact, once they've got a live product and a bit of a user base. So probably not the most popular opinion when it comes to it, but and I'll be honest, we've also invested in a few AI projects as a VC, and they are pretty well just from a bit of a speculatory perspective, if I'm being honest, right? So they have the best or better foundations. They are actually going somewhere as a company. And have the best sort of metrics for success as a business, and with a few proper, or not proper, but a few better utilities kind of baked into the process of how things are gonna pan out with their live application. So look, yeah, I don't think that AI and Web3 are a match made in heaven by any means. That's that's my unpopular opinion.
All fair. And again, that's why I ask, because we all see different things, and Corey and Fez, knowing just your exposure to things, certainly respect all you have to say.
Yeah, it's great hearing from both of them. And I, personally, I see AI more as a feature, not as a full product. And I'll give you just a little bit of an example from my background with product serialization. We were working for some large footwear manufacturers, and they were getting, unprecedented real-time data that they had never seen before from manufacturing, logistics, stuff that was usually trailing 6 to 8 weeks. And so they were, for the first time, being querying it, and they were doing it in in SQL, Excel kind of spreadsheets. And so we had to build them custom dashboards, and each brand within the company, and then each individual company had their own metrics or things that they wanted to measure. And so as a small startup, we were building multiple dashboards bespoke to each client need, and it was cumbersome, and it caused a lot of problems with us having runway and capacity of developers and engineers to actually build this out. Whereas I see today, if you only had a search query and you could just ask a question, where are blue shoes selling the best, and the AI could go in and figure that out, and then on the back end, not only helping the brand to answer these questions from a query search function, but also helping the developers and designers to build hot links to the most commonly asked questions, and then they could build their own dashboards, so that while the questions were coming in from the clients were extremely unique to their business, they were being compiled and sorted in such a way that the developers and engineers could prioritize which products to build and which dashboards to make first for a general user, and then they could dive down into the specifics. So I think that any technology company or anyone who's dealing with data and analytics and business decision making is going to want a piece of that. But I don't know necessarily that today is the day where the entire software has to be built on top of AI. I think it still needs some of its own individual aspects. So just a little bit of my perspective and how we're trying to approach it from some of the things we're doing at Chain Nexus.
Makes a lot of sense. So if you don't mind, I have one other question I want to ask all of you. I read something recently that said the tokenization of real world assets is going to be a big stabilizer for DeFi. So what do you think about that?
That's a good question. By stabilizer, just clarify what you mean on that, so I can answer that as best as I can, please.
I think, just given what we've seen in the market, like any market, the stock markets, anything else, there's always, uncertainty in the market at times, makes a little bit of a roller coaster ride. So I think given what we're seeing in the crypto arena right now, just the fact that tokenizing, RWAs will stabilize that uncertainty.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Look, it definitely brings a lot of trust into the Web3 space, 100%, as especially as you see larger institutions like Goldman Sachs and others, right, coming in and doing a lot of tokenization side of things. We are working with a few very large tokenization projects as well, in the billions of dollars, and they're done for very different reasons across the board, right? They're solving different issues in, that the traditional space hasn't solved yet, they can't solve yet, and they are not so much a synthetic version of an asset that's just being tokenized, but more of like the actual source of truth is being moved on chain, which is what I'm personally seeing a lot more of. And that is going to force a lot of the more traditional, NASDAQ style marketplaces, exchanges, to start to allow for Web3 support because of the way that these asset classes are actually coming into a more on-chain sort of scenario. So yeah, I think that's going to help bring a lot of trust into the Web3 space, especially because these asset classes are not pretend Web3, where it's like what a bank might be using just for their settlements. This is an actual, permissionless Web3 asset, that just so happens to be a one-to-one representation of, the real world counterparts. Not a synthetic representation, which you can't do with every asset class as well. Like you cannot have a non-synthetic tokenized gold. It's always going to be synthetic because gold is physical, right? But there is other asset classes like lost bonds and other types of purely digital commodity style assets that can be tokenized 100% on chain, and they have no Web2 counterpart that is their source of truth. It is the Web3 side. And that's where those changes are going to stem from.
Awesome. Fez, I don't know if you have any thoughts about this, especially since it does touch on something you brought up with adoption and, the user experience.
Yeah, totally. I do. I actually agree with what everyone said. Right, trust. it does. Like suddenly you've got what is it? What do they call it? It's not digital money, make believe money, magic money, magic internet money, to an asset that everyone knows that is now suddenly on chain and brings some validity to it, right? So definitely trust is a huge one here. In terms of RWAs, I found it interesting. Like RWAs also had its very heyday kind of narrative push and then kind of stagnated. But what we've seen happen there is it didn't end, right? Then you have the big players come in and going, no, this is a real deal. We are going to try and tokenize whatever and anything we can to bring it on chain. My rationale around that is just far cheaper to do it on chain than any other system they would have to build out to keep tracking everything. But in terms of real use cases, like we actually use it. So one of the things we've partnered and integrated with a real world asset RWA platform, High Yield, that's on Avalanche, because we're CDP and we have a stablecoin. We have a stability fund, just like MakerDAO, right? Like MakerDAO DAI gets minted with USDC and other assets, other stable coins. And what happens with them is that those stable coins sit in their stability fund, and then they buy T-bills and things with it, and it generates income from traditional finance. And that's why MakerDAO has all this money, and they've now gone down a different route with Athena and stuff like that. But we're doing something similar, right? We're actually already using this. We have over, and it's a small protocol, so this is not a large sum of money, but $1.5 million, and $1 million of that is sitting in T-bills, where external revenue is coming into the protocol and supporting the protocol in terms of a savings rate and various other things that have been implemented in the protocol. So I want to see more of that. Like right now, T-bill seems to be the simplest solution, and seems to be like there's various channels set up to make this happen easily and be compliant. I would love to get schooled on how it evolves to different assets. Yes, shares would be great, these things, but also like the holy grail houses and things like that. Like not all things can be tokenized, but how could they be if there was an opportunity there? Because once it's tokenized, well, the next step is, can we use it in the same manner we can use, our digital assets like ETH and BTC and stuff, as freely? That's kind of the barrier I would love RWAs to reach. Even with T-bills, it doesn't get there. Like you still need to be KYC. Your wallet needs to be KYC to be compliant, from a company perspective, so that the company doesn't get in trouble that's issuing these RWAs, etc. But yeah, I feel that's the holy grail, right? Like, or the aha moment. Like a traditional Web2 user definitely later on in life resonates that, okay, I have to get a house, I need a loan from the bank, and there's this excruciating process. And even after you say own the house, if you wanted to go and buy through it, it is quite a tedious process. And I hope the world evolves to one day, hey, I can take this on chain and manage my own thing just like I do with everything else, and bam, I have a loan and off I go doing whatever I want to do. Like, yeah, again, a bit of a rant, but that's kind of how, that's my personal where I would love to see solutions come into the real world asset space. But yeah.
Funny you should mention real estate, because that's honestly one of my little gripes that I have against tokenization, because it's probably one of the most, or more ridiculous things to try and actually tokenize, due to the fact that, let's just say you tokenize an apartment block and you're now a part owner in that, and there's a structure around that you've purchased into a company that might have full ownership. Then there is the fact of, okay, now who decides on what gets spent on any sort of renovations, any sort of fixes? Who's in charge of any of the rental contracts? So there's a whole lot of other aspects when it comes to real estate that people just don't take into account. And you see a lot of these projects that will try and they'll do a bunch of fundraising. They're saying, hey, yeah, like we're raising, $30 million. We want to buy a bunch of real estate, tokenize it. You can have part ownership, things like that. And then basically, they nowhere have I ever seen anybody talk about actually what happens after the fact of ownership. And when it comes to who pays for the land tax, who pays for, any of the upkeep, and anything else in between. So probably, as you can tell, it's probably one of the sore spots for me on tokenization, but we might get there one day.
It's interesting though, like you're right, this is the common case with this, but I do know, like, there's an old company since 2017, they've been around, Realty. They have this, they've been running, and they've kind of solved this, but no one's noticed, and they've just been humming around in the background. So they actually purchase properties and tokenize them as LLCs. And part of that is anything they purchase, they already have a management contract. They kind of do it all end to end, and that's part of the token holders' cost. And it's super interesting, and they've expanded from, they were primarily buying property in Detroit, and they've expanded to Florida and a few other strictly in America. But they're still around, and they've had properties catch fire, burn down, insurance claims, and they've navigated through all of that through their tokenized model, which is completely compliant. So not necessarily like it can't scale, because the way they are compliant, they're compliant in America. But some of the major challenges you've mentioned is stuff they have addressed in their model. But I haven't seen some of the new players. A lot of new players, yeah, they're doing the same thing, but you're right, they haven't factored any of these things into it. They're just like, yeah, we're buying, you can own a share, and okay, good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I stand corrected then. I'm glad that there is one, out there doing it correctly, because, and like you said, no one knows about them, because I certainly didn't. So that's fantastic. I'm glad that they are. And I'm happy to, definitely change my tune when I see people doing it properly, because that's the biggest thing that, especially in the Web3 space, people do things half-assed, and because it's such a speculative space, they can get away with it. So, it's very frustrating for us who are trying to do serious things, and even as a VC, us trying to look at projects in a serious manner. It's like sifting through a sea of garbage. It really is. And it gets pretty frustrating at times, I must tell you.
Yep. No, I hear you. I agree. That's half the as you go looking for different protocols and things, that's half the challenge. It's like you look at it and go, okay, but what is actually being established here? Where's value coming from it? Like, I've discovered some protocols that, they have their tokens, they're trading at ridiculous value, and they've just created the revenue is like fabricated, right? There's so much of that. So yeah, completely get it.
Reminds me of an article I think I seen. I forget who put it out, but it was a list of zombie chains, and You may have seen it floating around. It's been out for maybe a month or so now, and it essentially just listed a bunch of layer 1s and layer 2s, and what they actually did, which is virtually nothing, and their valuation and their trading volume was still quite high. Yeah, they just got dubbed zombie chains because they're alive but not, if that makes sense. It was quite funny.
Yeah.
What a concept. Well, this has been amazing. Corey, I love that you push back on real estate a little bit. And then, as we find in this space a lot, excuse me, there are so many enterprising people that catch on to a narrative, right? This cycle, RWAs is in, gaming are big ones. And so anybody who wants to do a quick raise is putting those into their pitch decks. And it's really great when we do find projects that have been through a couple of cycles and anticipated that there would be a demand for this sort of thing 3 to 5 years, and they just built, similar to the way you were talking earlier. We just, all the team members and the founders at Blubird are convicted to knowing that this will be something that people will need, and the product market fit is there, and we're just going to keep driving until it's done, even though we can't see that success today. Is the same as this company that determined tokenizing real estate is going to be important, and let's work through the problems during the bear, so that when we come to a market where people are actually demanding this, we have all those problems solved, and we can go to market with a viable solution and put everyone at ease. So just fascinating, as we all do our due diligence, and you see more of it than most of us. So it's good perspective to say, no, I haven't seen a good one yet. And then to find out there are some diamonds in the rough, right? We all know they exist. We just have to make sure we get through the noise and find them. So, but hey, we are at the top of the hour. We've gone almost 90 minutes. Time has been flying. I love that we got into this RWA discussion because that's a passion of mine. But I do want to be cognizant of everyone's time and kind of keep it banked so that we can keep these conversations concise and fresh and have something to look forward to for the next week. So what I'm going to do now, I just want to thank Fez and Icon for coming up, GP and Harry for joining us. But I want to give everyone on the stage just 30 seconds sign off. What's on your mind? What'd you take away from the conversation? What are you looking forward to? Really open-ended, and just appreciate you guys. So last comments from everyone who's still up here.
Mate, I don't think I'll take 30 seconds, but it was fantastic chatting to you today, Fez. And yeah, really, really insightful from, the DeFi perspective. Absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me on as well. Yeah, I've enjoyed every minute of it. I actually loved hearing from the VC perspective as well and getting some insights and you sharing some of the stories there. So that's been fantastic. Yeah, we'll be keen to come on in the future.
Well, we look forward to that. And again, really appreciate you coming on. It's been fantastic. You added a whole bunch of valuable information and perspective, and I look forward to checking out Icon a little bit more, as it was a new project to me. So anyone who's here in the audience or listening on replay, definitely be sure to follow the Blubird account, follow the Icon account, anyone who spoke. And Ian, I'll kick it to you. Final thoughts?
Yeah, again, it's just always great to be among industry leaders and visionaries. I think my real takeaway is stay curious, discover, create, and provide value.
Well, I love that. You always bring the insight. Even last week, I was listening back to some of the things you said, and you mentioned, when you give people access and knowledge, you empower them to create the future. And I think that's what we're trying to do here with the Birdhouse. I think that's what a platform like Blubird is creating, what interoperability and cross-chain solutions like Icon are creating. And so we really are lucky to have founders and industry leaders who are willing to spend this time with us and share that knowledge and put it out there. So again, guys, please keep coming back. Check us out next week. We'll be here same time, next Thursday, 8:30 on the East Coast. We'll have an announcement coming up and hopefully have another fantastic guest, and maybe Fez will even join us again. So, guys, thank you for coming through tonight, and we will see you next week from the Birdhouse. Flying out.